This was once one of the most guarded spots in all of England. Not because of what it was, but because of who was held inside. The turret house was finished in the year 1574. And it wasn't built as a prison at all. It was actually a high-end hunting tower. Mary Queen of Scots arrived in Sheffield as a prisoner in 1570. The turret house is the only part of that royal world still standing exactly as it was back then. It wasn't a dungeon, and it wasn't freedom either. Walking through here now, it feels quiet, but back then it was a hive of activity. Guards watching, doors constantly bolting. Mary had her own household cooks, loyal ladies in waiting, from helping her dress to embroidery and playing music. She even had her own doctors. Every part of her life was managed. She couldn't leave. Every letter she wrote was opened. Every conversation carried risk. The story here isn't just hers. There's George Talbot, the 6th Earl of Shrewsbury, the man tasked with being her jailer, and his wife, Bess of Hardwick. The man behind the grand buildings at Manor Lodge was the 4th Earl of Shrewsbury, who started building the main house in the early 1500s. A luxury escape from his castle. Later on, the 6th Earl, along with his famous wife, Bess of Hardwick, really put their mark on the place, transforming it with their own style, power and wealth. At first, it was a royal duty, but over 14 years it became a trap. The cost of feeding and guarding a queen nearly bankrupted them. The stress, the suspicion from the crown, the constant rumours, it broke them. Their marriage didn't survive. George and Bess were married for 23 years. But things started falling apart around 12 years into guarding Mary. They officially split for good in 1584. Mary was the prisoner, but in a way the place trapped everyone. This space is where the feast happened. It sounds grand, and she still ate like a queen, but imagine sitting here every single day and night for years. Same walls, same routine, and the same company who really didn't want to be there. Mary and her jailer's wife, Bess of Hardwick, will sit together for hours over their needlework. It looks like a simple domestic scene, but look closer at the stitches and you'll find a hidden language. Mary wasn't just sewing flowers, she was sewing codes. She famously stitched a ginger cat, toying with a tiny grey mouse. A direct, dangerous jab at Queen Elizabeth, who held her life in her hands. For 14 years her voice was silenced, and her letters were intercepted. But in every stitch of silk and gold thread, Mary found a way to shout her defiance. It was her therapy, her protest, and sometimes the only way she could still feel like a queen. The people living and working in these quarters were the backbone of the lodge. Maids, laundry hands, and kitchen help. This part was where the waste was collected. It sounds grim to us now, but they actually hung the expensive robes and clothes right here, near the toilet chutes. They knew the ammonia fumes from the waste would kill off the moths and keep the fabric from being eaten. It's actually where we got the word wardrobe from. Garderobe, meaning guard the robes. Behind the grand stories of Mary and Elizabeth, there were real people hauling water, scrubbing floors, and clearing out waste to use as fertiliser in the gardens. It's not a glamorous part of the story, it's the most human. It's the part that reminds us for every royal prisoner, there was dozens of people working and keeping this place running.
This is our Tudor cellar. You see, we've no magic boxes to keep our meat from spoiling. In our world, preservation isn't just a chore. It's a battle we fight every single day. We've dug this room deep into the belly of the earth. The soil acts like a heavy blanket, keeping the air sharp and steady, even when the July sun is baking the stones above. Close your eyes and you can almost smell it. The salt from the heavy barrels of beef, the tang of the great wheels of cheese, and row upon row of ale to keep the household merry. We bring the root vegetables straight from the dirt of the gardens. It's a full-time life, keeping the Queen and her keepers well fed, but in this damp chill, nothing goes to waste.
Now we're standing in the ruins of the South Range. This is where you see the true scale. This wasn't just a house, it was a massive estate surrounded by a deer park that stretched for miles. But for Mary, that open space was just a cruel view. Mary suffered from something they called dropsy. Basically, it was her body trapping fluid, making her legs and stomach painfully swollen and heavy. It wasn't just feeling a bit stiff, it was a constant weight that made every step a struggle. When you see the herbs in this garden, remember, they weren't just for decoration. Forward, and you'd never guess, a massive coal shaft here once dropped over 140 metres straight into the ground. It's hard to imagine now, but this place was once a gritty, industrial area of hard work and coal. It wasn't always a quiet ruin. It was a busy working site right up until the pit finally shut in 1896. Looking around now, you see open sky and broken stones. You can see the old chimney. It shows how much time has passed. After Mary was executed in 1587, people eventually stripped it, taking the stone to build the houses. It didn't fall, it was slowly carried away. You step into the gardens, and for a second the heavy weight of the prison walls seemed to lift. This wasn't just a patch of grass, it was a 16th century pharmacy. This was Mary's sanctuary. The garden was the only place that didn't feel like a cell. It's likely the only spot on the entire massive estate where she could close her eyes, breathe in the scent of crushed herbs, and for one moment feel like she'd escaped. While Mary was stuck up at the Manor Lodge in her gilded cage, life down here at the ponds just carried on. This was a grand spot for George Talbot, where his guests would feast after a day's hunting wild fowl in the nearby ponds. By the early 1800s, the road was known as Pondwell Hill, because it was literally the hill leading down to the town's wells and fish ponds. As Sheffield got busier and more industrial towards the end of the 19th century, they shortened it to Pond Hill. In the 1800s, it actually became a pub. It was renamed the Old Queen's Head as a tribute to Mary herself, the city's most famous prisoner. It's a strange thought, really. The Earl's private banqueting hall eventually turned into a local pub, named after the very woman he was paid to keep under lock and key. Mary came here hoping for protection. Instead, she got 14 years of confinement. She arrived young and believing things might change, but they didn't. What's left today might not look like much, but every wall and path holds part of that history. When she finally left these gates, it wasn't for a throne, it was for the executioner's block. You can't spend 14 years in one place hoping and hurting every single day without leaving something of yourself behind. Mary paid a massive price in Sheffield, not just mentally, but it actually broke her physical health down too. People see the luxury of her situation and maybe thought it couldn't have been that bad, but there was zero choice in it. To the outside world, she was surrounded by silk and fine wine, but this was a gilded distraction. Elizabeth wasn't greedy for Mary's money, she was greedy for Mary's silence. By keeping her in the royal lifestyle at Manor Lodge, Elizabeth could tell the world she was a guest, while Mary was actually being slowly erased from history. Most of us go through a hard time and at times come out the other side. But for 14 years, every time Mary tried to turn things around, she just hit the same walls. The chains that bound Mary might have been golden, but she never chose them.